Dr. Katie Morgan knelt beside the strange purple plants growing near the water's edge. The alien world of Kepler 442b was full of surprises. Every day brought new discoveries for the research team. She pulled out her scanner and pointed it at the plants. The device beeped softly as it recorded data about the alien life. "Katie, how are those samples coming along?" Commander Jake Phillips called out from behind her. He was checking his watch again. Jake always worried about keeping to the schedule. "Almost done," Katie replied. She loved her work as a marine biologist, but this planet was different from anything she had studied before. The purple plants seemed to move slightly when she touched them. "These plants are amazing, Jake. They react to touch like they're alive in ways we don't understand yet." Jake walked over to her, his boots crunching on the strange blue sand. "Well, wrap it up soon. We need to check the next area before dark. Ben says there's weather coming in." Ben Carter was their pilot. He had been flying in space for 20 years and could read weather patterns on any planet. If Ben said storms were coming, they needed to listen. Katie packed her equipment and stood up. The team had been on this planet for 3 weeks now. Every day they found new plants and animals that science had never seen before. The planet was beautiful, but dangerous. They had already seen some large creatures in the distance. The team called them shadow maws because of their dark color and big teeth. "Let's move to the canyon area," Jake said, pointing toward a group of tall rocks about a mile away. "We haven't explored that section yet." The team started walking. Katie, Jake, and 3 other researchers moved carefully across the alien landscape. The gravity here was lighter than Earth, so each step felt like floating. Katie enjoyed the feeling, but she knew it could be dangerous if they needed to run. As they got closer to the canyon, Katie noticed scratch marks on the rocks, deep claw, marks that looked fresh. She stopped walking and called out to Jake. "Commander, look at these marks," she said, running her finger along one of the scratches. "Something big made these, really big." Jake examined the marks with his flashlight. "How fresh do you think they are?" "Very fresh," Katie said. "Maybe hours old." The team became more careful as they moved forward. Everyone checked their weapons and stayed close together. They had stun guns, but nobody knew if they would work on the creatures of this planet. They reached the edge of the canyon and looked down. It was deeper than they expected, maybe 200 feet to the bottom. Strange blue mist floated up from below. Katie set up her equipment to scan the mist when she heard a sound that made her blood run cold. A low growling noise came from behind them. The team turned around slowly. Standing 50 feet away was the biggest shadow maw they had seen yet. It was 12 feet long from nose to tail, with black scales that seemed to absorb light. Its amber eyes glowed in the dim sunlight. The creature was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Nobody move," Jake whispered. But the shadow maw was not alone. Katie could see movement in the rocks behind it, more shapes moving in the shadows. The creature took a step toward them, and Katie noticed something that made her heart race even faster. This was a mother protecting her babies. Behind the big shadow maw, 3 smaller shapes moved between the rocks. Baby shadow maws, each about the size of a large dog. They made soft chirping sounds as they followed their mother. "It's protecting its young," Katie whispered. "We're too close to the den." The mother shadow maw growled louder and took another step forward. Her massive claws scraped against the rock, making the same marks Katie had seen earlier. Slowly back. "Away!" Jake ordered. "Don't make any sudden moves." But as the team started to move backward, one of the researchers stepped on loose rocks. The sound echoed across the canyon. The mother shadow maw roared and charged forward. "Run!" Jake shouted. The team scattered in different directions. Katie ran toward the canyon edge, hoping to find a path down where the creature couldn't follow. She could hear the shadow maw behind her, its heavy footsteps getting closer. Katie reached the edge of the canyon and looked for a way down. There was a narrow ledge about 10 feet below her. She could hear the creature getting closer. Without thinking, she jumped. Katie landed hard on the ledge, but it was made of loose rock. The ledge crumbled under her weight, and she fell again. This time she tumbled down the steep slope, bouncing off rocks and small trees. She tried to grab onto something to stop her fall, but everything she touched broke away. Finally, Katie crashed into a pile of soft plants at the bottom of the canyon. She lay still for a moment, checking if anything was broken. Her left arm hurt, and she had cuts on her face, but she could move everything. She was alive. Katie looked up. The canyon walls were steep and high. She could see the edge where she had fallen from, but it looked impossible to climb back up. She was trapped. Then she heard something that made her freeze. Soft, chirping sounds were coming from somewhere nearby. Katie turned around and saw a cave opening behind the plants where she had landed. The chirping sounds were coming from inside the cave. She remembered the baby shadow maws she had seen with their mother. Katie realized that in all the confusion, some of the babies might have fallen down here too. Or maybe this was where their den was located. Katie pulled out her flashlight and pointed it toward the cave. 3 pairs of amber eyes looked back at her from the darkness. The baby shadow maws were in the cave, and they seemed just as scared as she was. One of the babies made a soft sound, almost like a question. Katie stayed very still. She knew that sudden movements might make them attack, even though they were young. "It's okay," she whispered, not knowing if they could understand her tone of voice. "I'm not going to hurt you." The babies came closer to the cave entrance. In the light, Katie could see they were beautiful creatures. Their black scales were smaller and softer than their mother's. They moved with careful steps, watching Katie with curious eyes. Katie realized that she was no longer just trapped in a canyon. She was trapped with 3 baby predators, and their mother was probably looking for them right now. Katie spent her first night in the cave listening to every sound. The 3 baby shadow maws had moved deeper into the cave when darkness came. She could hear them breathing and making soft noises to each other. Sometimes one would make a small whimper, like it was scared or missing its mother. Katie was scared too, but she tried not to show it. She sat near the cave entrance with her back against the wall, watching the stars through the canyon opening above. Her emergency kit had enough food for 3 days, but she hoped the rescue team would find her sooner than that. When morning came, the babies moved closer to her again. Katie could see them better in the daylight. 2 of them looked almost identical, with bright amber eyes and small silver markings on their necks. The third one was slightly smaller and had a cut on its left front paw. It limped when it walked. Katie decided to give them names. She called the 2 healthy ones Ash and Storm because of their dark gray coloring. The injured one she named Luna because of a small crescent-shaped mark above its eye. "Hello, Luna," Katie said softly. "That paw looks like it hurts." Luna tilted its head at the sound of her voice. The baby creature seemed to understand that Katie was talking to it. Ash and Storm watched carefully from a few feet away. Katie slowly reached into her kit and pulled out a medical bandage. Luna backed away at first, but Katie held very still and kept talking in a calm voice. "I just want to help," she said. I know you're hurt. It took 2 hours, but finally Luna let Katie look at the injured paw. There was a deep cut, probably from the fall into the canyon. Katie cleaned it carefully with antiseptic from her kit and wrapped it with the bandage. "There," she said when she finished. "That should feel better." Luna made a sound that almost seemed like a thank you. The baby creature touched Katie's hand gently with its nose, then moved back to join Ash and Storm. By the second day, Katie's food was running low. She had been sharing her emergency rations with the babies, even though she knew it might not be safe for them to eat human food. But they seemed hungry, and she couldn't just watch them suffer. The babies had started following her around the cave. When she moved to a different spot, they moved too. When she sat down, they sat near her. Storm was the bravest, and sometimes came close enough for Katie to touch its scales. "You're just like puppies," Katie told them. "Very dangerous puppies, with claws and teeth." But the babies didn't act dangerous around her. They played with each other and made happy chirping sounds. Luna's paw was healing well with the bandage. Sometimes the babies would bring Katie small rocks or plants they found deeper in the cave, like they were giving her presents. On the third day, Katie heard the sound she had been hoping for. The low hum of an aircraft engine echoed through the canyon. She ran to the cave entrance and looked up. "Down here!" she shouted as loud as she could. "I'm down here!" A small rescue ship appeared at the top of the canyon. Katie could see Ben Carter in the pilot's seat. He waved when he spotted her. "Katie! Are you hurt?" Ben called down. "I'm okay," she shouted back, "but I'm not alone." Ben lowered the ship carefully into the canyon. As the engine noise got louder, the 3 babies became frightened and moved to the back of the cave. Katie tried to calm them down. "It's okay," she said. "Those are friends. They're here to help." But when Ben landed and opened the ship door, the babies would not come out of the cave. They made frightened sounds and hid behind the rocks. "Katie, what's in there with you?" Ben asked. He had his stun gun ready. 3 baby shadow maws," Katie said. "They're not dangerous. They've been staying with me for 3 days. Ben looked, surprised. "Baby shadow maws? Katie, we need to get you out of here right now. Their mother is probably close by." "They're injured and scared," Katie said. "I can't just leave them." "You have to," Ben said. "It's too dangerous." Katie looked back at the cave. She could see 6 amber eyes watching her from the darkness. The babies were scared and confused. They had trusted her for 3 days, and now she was supposed to abandon them. "Give me a few minutes," Katie said. She walked back into the cave and sat down near the babies. They came to her immediately, making soft sounds and nuzzling against her arms. Katie realized that something had changed over the past 3 days. These creatures had bonded with her, and she had bonded with them too. "I have to go now," she told them, "but I'll try to come back." Katie stood up and walked toward the ship. The babies followed her. When she reached the cave entrance, they stopped and made sad whimpering sounds. "Katie, come on," Ben called. "We need to leave now." Katie climbed into the ship, and Ben immediately started the engines. As they lifted off, Katie looked down at the cave entrance. The 3 babies had come out and were looking up at the ship. They made loud crying sounds that echoed through the canyon. "They're calling for me," Katie said. "They'll be fine," Ben said. "Their mother will find them." But as the ship flew higher, Katie saw something that made her heart race. The 3 babies were running along the bottom of the canyon, following the ship. They jumped over rocks and ran through streams, trying to keep up. "Ben, look!" Katie pointed down. "They're following us." Ben looked down and shook his head. I've never seen anything like that before. The babies kept following until the ship flew too high and too fast for them to keep up. Katie watched until they were just tiny dots far below. She felt like she was abandoning 3 friends who had trusted her. When they reached the research station, Commander Jake was waiting for them. He looked relieved to see Katie safe. "Thank goodness you're alive," Jake said. "We've been searching for 3 days." "The babies saved my life," Katie said. "They shared their cave and kept me warm at night." Jake looked confused. "Babies? Katie, you were alone in that canyon." "No, I wasn't," Katie said. 3 baby shadow maws were with me the whole time." That night, Katie couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Ash, Storm, and Luna. Were they safe? Had their mother found them? She felt like she had broken a promise, even though she never said she would stay. Around midnight, alarms started going off at the research station. Katie ran to the window and looked outside. In the distance, she could see 3 small shapes moving toward the station buildings. The babies had somehow found their way out of the canyon. They had tracked her across miles of alien wilderness, and now they were coming to find her. The security alarms kept ringing as Katie ran outside. She could see Ash, Storm, and Luna at the edge of the station's light. They stood together looking tired and scared. Luna was still limping slightly, but they had somehow traveled 20 miles through dangerous wilderness to find her. "Katie, get back inside!" Commander Jake shouted from the doorway. "Security Chief Lisa Grant is on her way with a team." But Katie ignored him and walked slowly toward the 3 babies. When they saw her, they made happy chirping sounds and ran to meet her. Storm reached her first and nuzzled against her leg. Ash and Luna followed, making soft sounds like they were telling her about their long journey. "How did you find me?" Katie asked, kneeling down to pet them. "You tracked me all this way?" Lisa Grant arrived with 4 security officers. They all had stun weapons ready. "Dr. Morgan, step away from those creatures immediately," Lisa ordered. "They're not dangerous," Katie said. "They're just babies looking for safety." "They're predators," Lisa said. "Even young ones can be deadly." The babies seemed to sense the threat. They moved closer to Katie and made low warning sounds toward the security team. Storm stepped in front of Katie like it was trying to protect her. "See?" Lisa said. "They're showing aggressive behavior." "They're protecting me," Katie said, "just like I protected them in the cave." Jake approached carefully. "Katie, we need to think about this logically. These creatures belong in the wild, with their own kind." "What if their mother is dead?" Katie asked. "What if she was killed while looking for them? They need someone to take care of them." Dr. Alex Torres, the team's xenobiologist, came running from the research lab. He had heard the alarms and wanted to see what was happening. When he saw the 3 babies with Katie, his eyes went wide. "This is incredible," Alex said. "I've never seen shadow maws behave this way around humans." "It's not normal behavior," Lisa agreed, "which makes them even more dangerous." Alex pulled out his scanner and pointed it at the babies. They didn't seem afraid of the device. "Katie, how long were you with them in the cave?" 3 days, Katie said. "We shared food and water. I helped Luna with her injured paw." "Fascinating," Alex said, reading the scanner data. "Their stress levels are much lower when they're near you, but when the security team gets closer, their stress spikes." Lisa was getting impatient. "I don't care about their stress levels. I care about station safety. These creatures need to be contained or removed." "Contained?" Katie stood up quickly. The babies sensed her anger and made small growling sounds toward Lisa. "They're not prisoners. They came here by choice." "Katie, calm down," Jake said. "We need to find a solution that works for everyone." But as they were talking, motion sensors around the station started beeping. Something big was moving in the darkness beyond the lights. Lisa checked her communicator. "Multiple large heat signatures approaching from the west," one of her officers reported. "At least 5 or 6 creatures, much bigger than the ones here." Katie felt her heart sink. She knew what this meant. The mother Shadow Maw had found her baby's trail, and she wasn't alone. "Everyone inside now," Lisa ordered, but the babies refused to move away from Katie. When Jake tried to grab Katie's arm to pull her toward the building, Storm snapped at him. Not to hurt him, but as a clear warning to stay away. "They won't let me go inside without them," Katie said. "Then bring them," Alex suggested. "We can secure them in the lab temporarily." Lisa shook her head. "I'm not allowing predators inside station buildings." The heat signatures were getting closer. Through the darkness, Katie could see glowing amber eyes approaching. The mother Shadow Maw emerged into the light, and she was even bigger than Katie remembered. Behind her were 5 other adult Shadow Maws, all moving with deadly grace. The babies saw their mother and made excited sounds, but instead of running to her, they stayed close. To Katie, this seemed to confuse the adult Shadow Maws. They stopped about 50 feet away and watched. "Why aren't they attacking?" Lisa whispered. She had her weapon ready, but she seemed afraid to move. The mother Shadow Maw took a step forward. She looked at Katie, then at her babies, then back at Katie. Her massive head tilted slightly, like she was trying to understand something. Katie realized this was a crucial moment. Whatever happened next would determine whether everyone lived or died. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, away from the security team. "Katie, no!" Jake shouted. The mother Shadow Maw growled low in her throat. But she didn't attack. Instead, she walked slowly toward Katie. The other adults stayed back, watching carefully. Katie stood very still as the massive creature approached. The mother Shadow Maw was close enough now that Katie could feel her warm breath. The creature sniffed at Katie's clothes and hair. Then she looked down at her babies. Luna limped forward and showed her mother the bandage on her paw. She made soft sounds, like she was explaining what had happened. Ash and Storm came forward, too, nuzzling against their mother but staying close to Katie. The mother Shadow Maw looked at Katie again. This time, her amber eyes seemed different. Less angry, more curious. She sniffed at Katie's hands and noticed the scent of her babies on them. "She's trying to understand why her babies chose me," Katie said quietly. The mother Shadow Maw made a decision. She lowered her massive head and gently touched Katie's forehead with her snout. It was warm and slightly rough, but surprisingly gentle. The touch lasted only a few seconds, but Katie felt like something important had just happened. Then the mother Shadow Maw stepped back and made a sound to her babies. It wasn't a command to come with her. It sounded more like she was asking them a question. The babies looked at their mother, then at Katie. One by one, they chose to stay beside Katie. The mother Shadow Maw made another sound, this one directed at Katie. It was deep and rumbling, but not threatening. Then she turned and walked back toward the other adults. The pack melted into the darkness, leaving Katie alone with the 3 babies. "What just happened?" Lisa asked. Alex was frantically taking notes on his scanner. "I think we just witnessed a Shadow Maw pack adoption ceremony. The mother just gave Katie permission to care for her young. That's impossible, Lisa said. Look at the evidence, Alex said, pointing at the babies. They were relaxed and happy, making soft sounds and playing around Katie's feet. They've chosen her as their caregiver, and their mother has approved the, choice. Jake shook his head in amazement. Katie, I think you just became the first human to be accepted into a Shadow Maw pack. Katie looked down at Ash, Storm, and Luna. They looked back at her with trusting amber eyes. She realized her life had just changed completely. She was no longer just a marine biologist studying alien life. She was now responsible for 3 intelligent predators who had chosen to make her their family. What happens now? Katie asked. Now, we figure out how to make this work, Alex said, because this could change everything we know about interspecies relationships. 2 weeks had passed since the babies chose Katie, and life at the research station had changed completely. Ash, Storm, and Luna followed Katie everywhere she went. They had grown larger and stronger, now reaching up to Katie's waist when they stood on their back legs. Their intelligence seemed to grow every day, too. Dr. Sam Rodriguez, the team's linguist, worked with Katie every morning to understand how the Shadow Maws communicated. Sam had studied dozens of alien languages, but the Shadow Maw sounds were unlike anything he had encountered before. They use combinations of growls, chirps, and body movements, Sam explained to Katie as they sat in the observation room. Watch Luna's tail when she's happy. See how it curves upward? That's different from when she's confused or scared. Katie had started to notice these patterns herself. The babies seemed to have different sounds for different emotions and needs. When they were hungry, they made soft whimpering sounds. When they wanted to play, they made quick chirping noises. When they sensed danger, they made low rumbling sounds in their throats. I think they're trying to teach me their language, Katie said. Yesterday, Storm kept making the same sound and pointing toward the door. When I followed him outside, he showed me tracks from some other animal. I think he was warning me about potential danger. Sam nodded excitedly. That's exactly what I think is happening. They're not just bonding with you emotionally. They're trying to include you in their communication system. Engineer Tony Blake had been working on a translation device based on Sam's research. Tony was good with technology and loved solving complex problems. He had built similar devices for other alien species the research teams had encountered. The tricky part, Tony explained while adjusting his equipment, is that Shadow Maw communication isn't just verbal. They use scent, body language, and even electromagnetic fields that our equipment can barely detect. Katie watched as Tony tested his device with Luna. He played back a recording of her mother's voice from the night she had visited the station. Luna's ears perked up immediately, and she made a series of sounds back at the device. She's responding to her mother's voice, Katie said. What do you think she's saying? Tony checked his readings. Based on the pattern analysis, I think she's saying something like mother far but safe with chosen pack leader. Chosen pack leader? Katie asked. Is that what they think I am? It makes sense, Sam said. In Shadow Maw society, pack leaders aren't always the biological parents. Young Shadow Maws can choose their leaders based on who they trust most. You proved yourself worthy when you cared for them in the cave. The revelation made Katie think about her responsibilities differently. She wasn't just caring for 3 pets. She was leading a pack, even if it was a very small one. Their routine was interrupted when a corporate shuttle landed at the station. Katie watched from the window as a woman in an expensive suit stepped out, followed by 6 security guards in heavy armor. Commander Jake met the new arrivals at the landing pad. Katie could see him talking with the woman, but she couldn't hear what they were saying. The conversation looked tense. The babies sensed Katie's worry. They moved closer to her and made soft comfort sounds. Storm nuzzled against her hand while Ash and Luna positioned themselves where they could watch the door. "Katie," Alex came into the room looking worried. "We have a problem. That's Helen Price from Universal Dynamics Corporation. She's here about the Shadow Maws." Katie felt her stomach tighten. Universal Dynamics was one of the biggest corporations in the galaxy. They were known for taking alien discoveries and turning them into profitable products, often without caring about the consequences for the alien species involved. "What does she want?" Katie asked. "She wants to take the babies for corporate research," Alex said. "She has legal documents claiming salvage rights on any unattended alien specimens found on this planet." "They're not specimens," Katie said, angrily. "They're intelligent beings who chose to be here." The babies reacted to Katie's anger by making low warning sounds. They could sense the threat even though they didn't understand the human politics involved. Helen Price entered the observation room with Commander Jake and two of her security guards. She was a tall woman with cold gray eyes and an expression that suggested she was used to getting what she wanted. "Dr. Morgan," Helen said without introducing herself, "I understand you've been harboring 3 Shadow Maw specimens." "I'm not harboring anything," Katie replied. "These are my pack members. They chose to stay with me." Helen laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Pack members? Dr. Morgan, these are dangerous predators. They belong in a secure research facility where they can be studied properly." Storm stepped forward and made a deep growling sound at Helen. The corporate security guards immediately raised their weapons, but Helen held up her hand to stop them. "See?" Helen said. "Aggressive and unpredictable. They need to be contained before someone gets hurt." "Storm is protecting me," Katie said. "He can sense that you're a threat." "I'm offering a reasonable solution," Helen continued. "Universal Dynamics will take the creatures off your hands and compensate the research. Team for your time. Everyone wins." "Except the Shadow Maws," Alex pointed out. Helen's expression hardened. "Dr. Torres, these creatures are classified as non-sentient predators under galactic law. They have no legal rights." "That law is wrong," Katie said. "These creatures are intelligent. They communicate. They form emotional bonds. They make choices. Taking them away from me would be like kidnapping children." "Don't be dramatic," Helen said. "They're animals. Valuable animals, but animals nonetheless." Luna stepped forward and made a series of sounds toward Helen. Tony quickly checked his translation device. "She's saying something like, 'bad human,' wants to hurt Pack," Tony reported. Helen looked surprised. "The device is translating their sounds?" "They have a complex language," Sam explained. "They understand concepts like family, loyalty, and trust. Dr. Morgan isn't just their caretaker, she's their chosen leader." "Interesting," Helen said, but her tone suggested she saw this as another profitable discovery rather than proof of intelligence. "A translation device would be very valuable. I assume you'll be including that technology in the package." "There is no package," Katie said firmly. "The babies aren't for sale, and neither is our research." Helen's smile disappeared completely. "Dr. Morgan, you don't seem to understand. I have legal authority to claim these specimens. You can cooperate willingly, or my security team can take them by force." The babies sensed the escalating tension. They moved to form a protective circle around Katie, facing outward toward the perceived threats. Their soft chirping sounds had been replaced by low, dangerous growls. If you try to take them by force, Katie said, they'll fight back, and they're not small anymore. Helen looked at the 3 shadow maws, now nearly as large as wolves, and obviously ready to defend their chosen leader. For the first time, she seemed uncertain. I'll give you 24 hours to reconsider, Helen said finally. After that, I'll be forced to call in additional security support. I hope you'll make the right choice, Dr. Morgan. As Helen and her guards left the room, Katie knelt down beside her 3 companions. They immediately calmed down and nuzzled against her. I won't let them take you, she promised. We're family now. But she knew that Helen Price was serious about her threat. Tomorrow would bring a much bigger challenge, and Katie wasn't sure how 3 young Shadow Maws and a small research team could stand against a powerful corporation. Alex put his hand on Katie's shoulder. We'll figure something out, he said. You're not alone in this. Katie hoped he was right, but she had a feeling the real test was just beginning. Katie woke up before dawn to the sound of aircraft engines. Through her window, she could see 3 large corporate shuttles landing near the research station. Helen Price had returned with reinforcements, just as she promised. Ash, Storm, and Luna were already awake and alert. They had grown even larger over the past day, their bodies now reaching Katie's chest when they stood up. Their amber eyes glowed in the dim morning light as they watched the approaching threat. Katie, Commander. Jake's voice came through the intercom. Helen Price wants to meet with you in 10 minutes. She's brought a lot more security this time. Katie quickly got dressed and met Jake in the corridor. Through the windows, she could see at least 20 armed security guards setting up a perimeter around the station. The message was clear. Universal Dynamics wasn't taking no for an answer. Where are Alex and the others? Katie asked. Sam and Tony are in the lab, backing up all their research data, Jake said. Alex is monitoring the situation from the observation deck. Katie, these people mean business. Maybe we should consider their offer. No, Katie said firmly. The babies trust me to protect them. I won't break that trust. The babies followed Katie as she walked toward the main conference room. She noticed they were moving differently now, their steps more careful and coordinated. They were preparing for a fight. Helen Price was waiting in the conference room with 6 armed guards. She looked confident and relaxed, like someone who knew she held all the advantages. Dr. Morgan, Helen said without greeting, I hope you've reconsidered my generous offer. I told you yesterday, Katie replied. The answer is no. Helen sighed dramatically. I was afraid you'd say that. Very well. My security team is authorized to sedate and capture the specimens. I'd prefer to do this peacefully, but I'm prepared for other options. The babies sensed the danger immediately. They moved to form a protective triangle around Katie, their growls growing louder and more threatening. Storm took a step toward Helen's guards, his claws extended. I wouldn't do that, if I were you, Katie warned. They're not as helpless as they were 2 weeks ago. Neither are we, Helen said. She nodded to her guards, who raised strange-looking weapons. These are high-powered neural disruptors. They'll knock out anything with a nervous system. But before the guards could fire, alarms started going off throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red, and a computerized voice announced, multiple large life forms detected approaching station perimeter. Helen looked confused. What's happening? Through the conference room windows, Katie could see shapes moving in the early morning mist. Large, dark shapes that moved with deadly grace. The motion sensors around the station were going crazy as dozens of heat signatures appeared on the screens. It's the pack, Katie said, her heart racing. The mother came back with reinforcements. Alex's voice came through the intercom from the observation deck. Katie, you need to see this. There are at least 30 adult shadow maws surrounding the station. They're not attacking, but they're definitely watching. Helen's confidence disappeared. 30 of them? That's impossible. Our intel said there were only a few predators in this area. Your intel was wrong, Katie said. Shadow maws are highly social creatures. They live in extended family groups. And you just threatened their chosen pack leaders young. The mother shadow maw emerged from the mist first. She was even more impressive than Katie remembered, her black scales gleaming like armor. Behind her came the other adults, each one larger and more dangerous-looking than Helen's security guards could handle. The mother shadow maw approached the station slowly, her amber eyes fixed on the building, where Katie was located. She made a series of deep rumbling sounds that echoed across the landscape. Tony's voice came through the intercom. Katie, the translation device is picking up her communication. She's asking if you and her young are safe. Tell her we're okay, but threatened, Katie said. Tony worked quickly with his equipment. A series of electronic sounds played through the station's external speakers, translating Katie's message into Shadow Maw language. The mother Shadow Maw tilted her head, listening. Then she made another sound, this one directed at the other adults. Inner pack. What did she say? Katie asked. Something like, protect chosen leader and young from threat, Tony translated. Helen's guards were looking nervous now. Through the windows, they could see adult shadow maws positioning themselves around the station. The creatures weren't attacking, but they were clearly ready to defend Katie and the babies. This is insane, Helen muttered. They're actually protecting a human. They're protecting their family, Katie corrected. I'm part of their pack now. Helen tried to regain control of the situation. My security team can handle a few animals. We have advanced weapons and... Her words were cut off by a sound that made everyone in the room freeze. It was the combined roar of 30 adult shadow maws, a sound so deep and powerful that it seemed to shake the entire station. The message was clear. Any threat to Katie or the babies would be met with overwhelming force. Ma'am, one of Helen's guards said nervously, I don't think our weapons can handle this many targets. We should retreat and call for military backup. No retreat, Helen said, but her voice was shaky. We came here for those specimens, and we're not leaving without them. The babies had been listening to the adult shadow maws outside. Now they made their own sounds in response, complex vocalizations that seemed to be explaining the situation to their extended family. They're telling the adults about what's happening in here, Sam said through the intercom. The pack knows exactly who the threat is. As if to prove Sam's point, the mother shadow maw appeared at the conference room window. She looked directly at Helen and her guards, then at Katie and the babies. Her meaning was unmistakable. She knew who belonged in her family and who didn't. Helen stepped back from the window. This is unprecedented. No one has ever reported shadow maws protecting humans before. That's because no human has ever been adopted into their pack structure before, Alex explained. Katie isn't just caring for their young. She's become their leader. The standoff continued for several tense minutes. Helen's guards kept their weapons ready, but they looked increasingly uncomfortable as more shadow maws appeared around the station. The creatures made no threatening moves, but their presence was intimidating enough. Finally, Helen spoke into her communicator. Command, this is Price. I need immediate military support at Research Station 7. We have a situation that requires heavy firepower. Katie felt her heart sink. If Helen called in the military, this could become a massacre. The Shadow Maws were protecting her and the babies, but they couldn't fight advanced human weapons forever. "You don't have to do this," Katie said to Helen. "The babies are happy here. They're learning and growing. Why does universal dynamics need to control every discovery?" "Because that's how progress works," Helen replied. "These creatures could revolutionize our understanding of alien intelligence. They belong in a proper research facility, not playing house with a sentimental scientist." Storm made a sound that Tony's device translated as, "Bad human wants to break pack." The mother Shadow Maw heard her young one's distress and responded with her own vocalizations. The translation device picked up her words. "If pack leader needs protection, pack will provide protection." "Katie," Alex said through the intercom, "I think you need to make a choice. You can try to negotiate with Helen, or you can trust the pack to handle this their way." Katie looked at the three babies who had chosen her as their leader. Then she looked at Helen, who saw them only as valuable property. The choice was clear. "I trust my pack," Katie said aloud. The babies seemed to understand her decision. They moved closer to her and made soft, approving sounds. Outside, the mother Shadow Maw nodded once, as if she had heard and approved of Katie's choice. The real confrontation was about to begin. The storm that pilot Ben Carter had predicted finally arrived 3 hours after Helen's military backup call. Dark clouds rolled across the alien sky, bringing with them fierce winds and sheets of freezing rain. The weather made it impossible for military ships to land safely, giving Katie and the Shadow Maw pack an unexpected advantage. "The military forces are holding position in orbit," Alex reported from the communications center. "They can't deploy until the storm passes." Katie stood at the observation window, watching the adult Shadow Maws take shelter under rocky overhangs and in cave entrances around the station. They hadn't left despite the dangerous weather. Their commitment to protecting her and the babies was absolute. The mother Shadow Maw appeared at the window again, her scales dripping with rain. She made a series of sounds that Tony's translation device picked up clearly. "She's inviting you to come with them to their main den," Tony reported. "She says the caves are safe from the storm and from the threat." Helen overheard the translation and laughed harshly. "You can't be serious. You're going to abandon human civilization to live in caves with animals?" "They're not animals," Katie said firmly. "They're my family, and they're offering me something you never could." "What's that?" Helen asked. "Acceptance without conditions," Katie replied. "They don't want to change me or use me for profit. They just want me to be part of their pack." Ash, Storm, and Luna had been listening to their mother's invitation. They made excited sounds and moved toward the door, clearly eager to join the rest of their family in the safety of the caves. "Katie," Commander Jake said quietly, "if you go with them, you might not be able to come back. The corporate military forces won't give up easily." "Then maybe I don't want to come back," Katie said. "What kind of life would I have knowing that Helen's corporation is hunting the beings I care about?" Dr. Sam Rodriguez approached with a serious expression. "Katie, before you make this decision, there's something you need to understand. The pack isn't just offering you shelter, they're offering you a test." "What kind of test?" Katie asked. Sam checked his notes from the translation device. "Based on the communication patterns we've recorded, I believe they want to see if you can truly function as a pack leader. Living with them means hunting with them, defending territory with them, and making decisions that affect the entire group's survival." "That sounds like exactly what I've been doing for the past 2 weeks," Katie said. On a small scale, yes, Sam agreed. But the mother's pack includes over 40 adults and dozens of young. If you accept their invitation, you'll be responsible for all of them. The weight of that responsibility hit Katie hard. She had thought she was just caring for 3 babies, but she was being asked to become a leader for an entire community of intelligent beings. Tony's equipment beeped with another incoming message from the mother Shadow Maw. She says the storm is getting worse. If you're coming with them, you need to decide now. Katie looked at Ash, Storm, and Luna. They watched her with trusting amber eyes, waiting for her decision. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. Finding them in the cave, sharing her food with them, watching them choose her over their biological family, defending them against corporate greed. I need to try, Katie said finally. These creatures chose me for a reason. Maybe it's time I found out what that reason is. Helen stepped forward angrily. Dr. Morgan, if you leave this station with those specimens, Universal Dynamics will classify you as a hostile entity? You'll be hunted across the galaxy. Then I guess I better learn to be a good pack leader, Katie replied. Katie gathered a few essential supplies, her medical kit, some tools, and her research notes. Everything else felt unimportant compared to the choice she was making. The research team gathered to say goodbye. Commander Jake looked worried, but respected her decision. Alex and Sam promised to continue their translation research and find ways to prove Shadow Maw intelligence to the galactic community. Tony gave her a portable version of his translation device. Stay in touch if you can, Alex said. The galaxy needs to know that peaceful coexistence is possible. Ben Carter offered to fly Katie to the cave system, but the storm was too dangerous for aircraft. She would have to travel on foot with the pack, just like any other member. Katie walked outside into the freezing rain. The mother Shadow Maw was waiting for her, along with a dozen other adults. When they saw Katie approaching with her 3 young pack members, they made welcoming sounds. The mother Shadow Maw approached Katie and touched her forehead again with her snout, just as she had done during their first meeting. But this time, the gesture felt different. It felt like a formal acceptance into the pack. She's acknowledging you as co-leader, Tony's voice came through Katie's portable communicator. You and she will share responsibility for the pack's welfare. The journey to the cave system took 4 hours through dangerous terrain. Katie had to prove herself immediately by keeping up with the pack's rapid pace, helping injured members navigate slippery rocks, and making quick decisions about the safest route through the storm. The babies stayed close to Katie throughout the journey, but they also communicated constantly with the adult pack members. Katie realized they were translating for her, helping the other Shadow Maws understand her human limitations while explaining their needs to her. When they finally reached the main cave system, Katie was amazed by what she found. The caves were vast and complex, with multiple levels and chambers. Dozens of Shadow Maws lived here, including elderly members and very young cubs. It was a complete society, not just a group of predators. The pack had areas for sleeping, food storage, and caring for the sick or injured. They had established territories within the cave system and clear social hierarchies. Katie realized she wasn't joining a simple animal pack. She was becoming part of an advanced civilization. That first night, Katie participated in what seemed to be a pack meeting. The adult Shadow Maws gathered in a large central chamber and shared information about territory boundaries, food sources, and potential threats. When it was Katie's turn to speak, she used Tony's device to explain the danger posed by the human military forces. The pack listened carefully to her warning. Then they began discussing strategy. Katie was surprised to discover that they had detailed knowledge of human technology and tactics. They had been observing human settlements for years, learning about the newcomers to their world. They want to know if you can help them understand human weaknesses. Luna's translation came through the device. Katie realized that Luna had become her primary interpreter, bridging the communication gap between species. "I can teach you about human psychology and technology," Katie said, "but only for defensive purposes. I won't help you hurt innocent people." The mother Shadow Maw made an approving sound. Through Luna's translation, Katie learned that the pack had no interest in harming humans who posed no threat. They only wanted to protect their territory and their young from those who would exploit them. Over the following days, Katie began to understand the true complexity of Shadow Maw society. They had laws, traditions, and even art forms. They created beautiful patterns on cave walls using naturally occurring phosphorescent materials. They composed complex songs that told the history of their people. But they also had enemies. Other predator species competed for territory, and some Shadow Maw packs had hostile relationships with each other. As co-leader, Katie found herself involved in complex diplomatic negotiations and strategic planning sessions. The real test came when scouts reported that the storm had passed and human military ships were landing near the research station. Helen Price had arrived with enough firepower to level the entire cave system. "They want to know if you're ready to lead the pack in battle," Luna translated for her mother. Katie looked around at the dozens of Shadow Maws who now looked to her for guidance. 3 weeks ago, she had been a simple marine biologist. Now she was responsible for the survival of an entire civilization. "Tell them I'm ready," Katie said, "but we're going to do this my way. No unnecessary violence and no harm to innocent humans. We protect our own, but we also try to find a peaceful solution." The mother Shadow Maw nodded approvingly. Katie had passed the first part of her test. Now came the real challenge, proving that a human could truly lead a Shadow Maw pack. In the face of overwhelming odds, Admiral Roy Duncan commanded the largest military fleet in this sector of the galaxy. He was a career soldier who had fought in dozens of conflicts, but he had never faced a situation quite like this one. Standing on the bridge of his flagship, he studied the tactical reports with growing frustration. "You're telling me that one human scientist has convinced an entire pack of alien predators to protect her?" he asked his intelligence officer. "That's correct, sir," Lieutenant Mills replied. "Dr. Katie Morgan has been living with the Shadow Maws for 5 days now. Our scouts report that she's been accepted as a pack leader." Admiral Duncan shook his head. "This is why civilians shouldn't be allowed on frontier planets. They get emotional attachments to dangerous species." Helen Price stood beside the Admiral, her expression cold with anger. She had spent considerable corporate resources on this operation, and she wasn't about to accept failure. "Admiral, I don't care about Dr. Morgan's emotional problems," Helen said. "I need those Shadow Maw specimens recovered, and I need the security threat they represent eliminated." "Ma'am, with respect, these creatures don't seem to be threatening anyone except your security teams," Admiral Duncan replied. "Maybe we should consider negotiation instead of force." "Negotiation?" Helen laughed harshly. "Admiral, these are valuable research specimens that could revolutionize biotechnology. We're not negotiating with animals." Down in the cave system, Katie was learning that the Shadow Maws had been preparing for this confrontation longer than anyone realized. The mother Shadow Maw, whose name Katie had learned was Nightshade, led her through hidden passages that connected to observation points throughout the mountain range. "Your species has been watching humans since we first arrived on this planet," Katie said as Luna translated between them. Nightshade confirmed this with a series of sounds that Luna interpreted. She says they've been studying human behavior and technology for 3 years. They know about your weapons, your tactics, and your weaknesses. Katie was impressed by their intelligence gathering, but also worried about what it meant. Do they see all humans as enemies? No, Luna translated, after consulting with her mother. They distinguish between humans who respect life and humans who seek to dominate it. They've decided you belong to the first group. Ash and Storm had grown even larger during their time in the caves. They now stood as tall as Katie's shoulders and moved with the deadly grace of adult shadow maws. But they still followed her everywhere and looked to her for guidance. "Katie," Storm said through the translation device. His language skills had improved dramatically. "Pack scouts report human ships moving to attack positions. What are your orders?" Katie felt the weight of leadership settling on her shoulders. 43 adult shadow maws and 27 young ones looked to her for protection. But she also knew that Admiral Duncan's forces included hundreds of trained soldiers with advanced weapons. "We defend our territory," Katie decided. "But we also try to minimize casualties on both sides. The goal is to make them understand that we're not a threat to peaceful humans." Nightshade made an approving sound. Through Luna, she explained the pack's battle strategy. "We use the cave systems to avoid direct confrontation. We strike quickly at their equipment and supply lines, then disappear. We make their mission too expensive to continue." Katie realized the Shadow Maws were planning guerrilla warfare tactics that would have impressed any human military strategist. These weren't mindless predators defending territory. They were intelligent beings fighting for their freedom. The first attack came at dawn. Admiral Duncan's forces approached the main cave entrance with heavy artillery and energy weapons. They expected to find primitive creatures hiding in simple caves. Instead, they found themselves fighting one of the most sophisticated defensive campaigns they had ever encountered. The Shadow Maws struck from hidden passages that the human scanners couldn't detect. They disabled vehicles and communication equipment. With precise attacks, then vanished before the soldiers could respond. Katie coordinated the defense using her knowledge of human psychology and tactics, while Nightshade managed the complex logistics of moving 43 large predators through the cave system without detection. "Ma'am, we've lost 6 vehicles and our primary communication array," Lieutenant Mills reported to Helen Price. "The creatures seem to know exactly where to hit us for maximum damage." "That's impossible," Helen replied. "These are animals. They can't understand military strategy." But Admiral Duncan was beginning to suspect otherwise. "Lieutenant, what's our casualty count?" "That's the strange part, sir. No serious injuries. The creatures are disabling our equipment, but they're being very careful not to harm our personnel." Admiral Duncan studied the tactical displays with growing respect for his opponents. "They're not trying to kill us. They're trying to make us leave." During a brief pause in the fighting, Katie made a decision that surprised everyone. She walked out of the cave entrance alone, carrying a white flag made from one of her shirts. "I want to speak with Admiral Duncan," she called to the surprised soldiers. After a tense negotiation, Admiral Duncan agreed to meet with Katie in a neutral area between the human forces and the cave entrance. Nightshade and 2 other adult Shadow Maws accompanied Katie, while the Admiral brought 2 of his officers. "Dr. Morgan," Admiral Duncan said as they sat down at a makeshift table, "you've put me in a very difficult position." "I understand that, Admiral," Katie replied. "But you need to understand something, too. These beings are not specimens or resources. to be harvested. They're intelligent people with their own society and culture. Even if that's true, Admiral Duncan said, my orders are clear. Universal Dynamics has legal authority to claim these creatures. Nightshade made a series of sounds that Luna translated through Katie's device. She says that no human law has authority over her people. They were here first, and they will defend their right to exist freely. Admiral Duncan looked surprised to hear the translation. They really do have language? They have language, culture, art, and complex social structures, Katie explained. I've been living with them for 5 days, and I'm still discovering new aspects of their intelligence. One of Admiral Duncan's officers leaned forward. Dr. Morgan, if these creatures are truly intelligent, then attacking them could be considered an act of war against a sentient species. Katie saw an opportunity. That's exactly what it would be, Colonel. And I don't think the Galactic Council would approve of Universal Dynamics starting an interspecies war for corporate profit. Helen Price's voice came through Admiral Duncan's communicator. Admiral, whatever that woman is telling you, don't listen. She's been compromised by extended contact with alien influences. But Admiral Duncan was a career military officer who understood the difference between a legitimate mission and a corporate land grab. Ms. Price, I need to ask you a direct question. Do you have any evidence that these creatures pose a threat to human colonies or ships? They're predators, Admiral, Helen replied. That makes them inherently dangerous. So are humans, Admiral Duncan pointed out. That doesn't make us enemies of every species we encounter. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching aircraft. 3 more corporate shuttles were landing, carrying what looked like private military contractors rather than official galactic forces. Reinforcements? Katie asked. Admiral Duncan checked his tactical display and frowned. I didn't call for reinforcements. Miss Price, what are those ships? Insurance, Helen's voice came through the communicator. If you won't complete the mission, Admiral, I've hired people who will. Katie felt her heart sink. The private contractors wouldn't be bound by military rules of engagement. They would use whatever force necessary to capture or kill the Shadow Maws. Nightshade sensed the new threat and made urgent sounds to her pack. Through the cave system, Katie could hear the complex vocalizations as the information spread to every member of the community. Admiral, Katie said urgently, if those contractors attack, this will become a massacre. The Shadow Maws will fight to protect their young, and your corporate friends won't show the restraint your soldiers have. Admiral Duncan stood up, his expression grim. Dr. Morgan, I think I need to reconsider my orders. This situation has become more complicated than anyone anticipated. As the private contractors deployed from their shuttles, Katie realized that the real battle was just beginning. But now she had an unexpected ally in Admiral Duncan, who seemed to understand that some things were more important than corporate profits. The test of Katie's leadership was about to reach its climax. Species. In the educational center, young beings from both species were learning each other's languages and sharing their cultures. In the communication center, Tony Blake and a team of Shadow Maw engineers were finalizing the design for a translation network that would connect colonies across multiple worlds. You know what the most amazing part is? Katie said to her 3 companions. None of this happened because of some grand plan or corporate strategy. It happened because 3 scared baby Shadow Maws chose to trust a human scientist in a cave. And because one human chose to trust us back, Luna replied. 3 weeks later, Katie stood on the bridge of Admiral Duncan's flagship as it approached the planet Kepler 438c, where reports of conflict between human colonists and native predators had reached the Galactic Council. Her official title was Director of Interspecies Relations, but she preferred to think of herself simply as someone who helped different peoples understand each other. Ash, Storm, and Luna accompanied her, along with a small team of human and shadow maw specialists from the original colony. Their mission was to investigate the situation and, if possible, help establish peaceful coexistence. "Director Morgan," the ship's communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It appears to be from the native species." "Can we translate it?" Katie asked. Tony Blake, who had also joined the mission, worked quickly with his improved translation equipment. "It's a simple message," he reported. "They're asking if the pack leader who speaks for two peoples has come to help them." Katie smiled. Word of the successful colony had spread faster than she had expected. Other species across the galaxy were learning that peaceful cooperation was possible, and they wanted to experience it for themselves. "Tell them yes, Kay." 6 months had passed since the confrontation at the cave system, and the mountain valley had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. The first interspecies colony stretched across several square miles, with human buildings integrated seamlessly alongside shadow maw den structures. Katie stood on the observation platform that engineer Tony Blake had built at the valley's center. From here, she could see the entire community that had grown from her simple decision to care for 3 baby shadow maws in a cave. Now those same 3 creatures, Ash, Storm, and Luna, had become her trusted lieutenants in managing a population of over 200 humans and shadow maws living together. "Katie," Dr. Alex Torres called from below. "The morning council meeting is ready to start." The council meetings had become a daily tradition. Representatives from both species gathered to discuss everything from resource allocation to conflict resolution. Katie served as the primary liaison, though Luna had become so skilled with the translation technology that she often handled routine communications independently. Katie walked down to the council chamber, a large circular building, designed by both human architects and shadow maw den builders. The structure used human engineering principles combined with shadow maw understanding of natural airflow and thermal regulation. Nightshade was already present, along with 5 other adult shadow maws and an equal number of human colonists. The morning agenda included reports from the agricultural teams, updates on the new communication network that Tony was installing, and preparations for the arrival of the Galactic diplomatic mission next week. "The crop yields are exceeding all projections," reported Dr. Sarah Kim, the colony's agricultural specialist. "The shadow maw knowledge of soil chemistry has helped us develop farming techniques that work better than anything we brought from Earth." Storm, who had become the leader of the colony's reconnaissance teams, gave his report through Luna's translation. "All territorial boundaries remain secure. The neighboring shadow maw packs continue to respect our borders, and no hostile species have been detected within 50 kilometers. Katie smiled as she listened to the reports. The colony had become a model of cooperation that attracted attention from across the galaxy. Scientists, diplomats, and curious visitors arrived regularly to study how 2 completely different species had learned to live and work together. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been conflicts over food distribution, misunderstandings about territorial rights, and cultural clashes that required careful negotiation. But gradually, both species had learned to appreciate each other's strengths. The shadow maws contributed their superior knowledge of the planet's ecosystem, their advanced hunting and tracking skills, and their sophisticated understanding of group dynamics. The humans brought technological innovations, agricultural techniques, and connections to the wider galactic community. Katie, Ash's voice came through the translation system. He had developed into the colony's primary defense coordinator. The Morning Patrol reports that Admiral Duncan's ship is approaching for his weekly visit. Admiral Duncan had become an unexpected ally after the confrontation with Helen Price's private contractors. When the shooting had started 6 months ago, he had made a crucial decision to protect both the Shadow Maws and his own soldiers from the corporate mercenaries. The battle had been brief but decisive, ending when Duncan's forces surrounded and disarmed the contractors. "Dr. Morgan," Duncan had said afterward, "I've been a soldier for 30 years, and I know the difference between protecting people and serving corporate greed. These creatures aren't weapons or resources. They're people defending their home." Duncan's support had been crucial in legitimizing the colony. His testimony to the Galactic Council about Shadow Maw intelligence and the successful interspecies cooperation had led to official recognition of the settlement. Helen Price had not given up easily. Universal Dynamics had filed numerous legal challenges and had even attempted to hire other military contractors. But the galactic media attention generated by the colony's success had made it politically impossible to attack a peaceful settlement. That represented a breakthrough in interspecies relations. Katie walked to the landing pad to meet Admiral Duncan. He visited regularly now, partly as an official observer for the Galactic Military Command, but mostly because he had become genuinely fascinated by what the colony had achieved. "Katie," Duncan said as he stepped off his shuttle, "the council session went well. They've approved funding for 3 more similar colonies on other worlds." "That's wonderful news," Katie replied. "Any word on the Universal Dynamics situation?" Duncan's expression darkened slightly. "Helen Price has been reassigned to a desk job on Earth. The corporate board wasn't happy about the negative publicity from their attempted raid on a peaceful settlement. Universal Dynamics is now funding several research projects studying beneficial interspecies cooperation." As they walked through the colony, Katie pointed out the latest developments. The medical center where human and Shadow Maw doctors worked together to develop new treatments that drew from both species' knowledge. The educational facility where human children played and learned alongside young Shadow Maws. The engineering workshops where Tony Blake and Shadow Maw craftsmen created hybrid technologies that neither species could have developed alone. "It's remarkable," Duncan said as he watched a group of human teenagers working with young adult Shadow Maws to construct a new communications tower. 6 months ago, most humans thought these creatures were just dangerous predators. "Fear usually comes from not understanding," Katie replied. "Once people get to know each other as individuals, the fear disappears." They paused at the memorial garden that had been built to honor those who had died in various conflicts between humans and Shadow Maws over the years. It served as a reminder of why the colony's peaceful approach was so important. "Katie," Duncan said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you. The Galactic Council wants to offer you a position as Director of Interspecies Relations. It would mean traveling to other worlds, helping establish more colonies like this one." Katie considered the offer carefully. The work would be important, but it would mean leaving the community she had helped build. "What do Nightshade and the others think?" she asked. "That's the interesting part," Duncan replied. "They want you to take the position. They believe that spreading this model to other worlds is the best way to protect all Shadow Maw communities from future corporate exploitation." That evening, Katie sat with Ash, Storm, and Luna on their favorite hilltop overlooking the colony. The three Shadow Maws were now fully adult, each weighing over 300 pounds and standing taller than Katie. But they still enjoyed these quiet moments together, just like when they were babies in the cave. "The council position would be good for our people," Luna said through the translation device her voice now carried permanently, "but we want to come with you." Katie was surprised. "All three of you?" "We are your pack," Storm replied. "Where you go, we go. That has not changed since we were cubs." Ash, who had always been the most thoughtful of the three, added his opinion. "Other worlds need to learn what we have learned here. Humans and Shadow Maws are stronger together than apart." Katie looked down at the colony, where lights were beginning to come on in windows and dens. Human families and Shadow Maw packs were settling in for the evening, living side by side in the peaceful community they had all helped create. In the medical center, Dr. Lisa Park was working late with her Shadow Maw colleague to develop a new treatment for a disease that affected both